Welcome to the Blogger Genius Podcast, brought to you by Milo Tree. Here's your host, Jillian Leslie.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Blogger Genius Podcast. I am your host, Jillian Leslie, and I am so happy you are here with me. I am a blogger and a serial entrepreneur. I have been building businesses online with my husband, David, since 2009 when we launched Catch My Party, our first site. Since then, we've built a pop-up app called Milo Tree that many of you use. And recently, we have launched Milo Tree Cart, the easiest tool to use to sell digital products. So this week has been incredibly busy for me because so many of you have reached out to say, I want to start selling digital products, and you have been buying Milo Tree Cart like crazy, and I've been interacting and emailing with all of you, so I want to say thank you. And if you are thinking about selling digital products like ebooks and workshops and coaching and memberships and all of that, definitely go check out Milo Tree Cart. Before I get into today's episode, I want to invite you to the workshop I am hosting on Friday, January 20th at noon Central Time. It's all about how to write your first ebook. I don't know if you know this, but there has been this incredible technological shift that has gone on in AI. And the tool that I want to talk about at the workshop is called ChatGPT. If you do not have a free account, definitely get one after you listen to this episode, because this AI writing tool is so incredibly powerful. So at the workshop I'm hosting on Friday, I'm going to show you how to use ChatGPT to create an ebook effortlessly. If you want to come to the workshop, it's $10, because remember, I charge because I want you to have skin in the game. Please go to workshop.milotreecart.com. It's going to be on Zoom. Again, that is workshop.milotreecart.com. It's for people who have played around with ChatGPT and people who don't know the first thing about it. But just you wait, I am going to blow your mind. For today's episode, I have Casey Botticello on the show. He is the founder of Blogging Guide, which is this great resource to help writers monetize their content. Now, I know a lot of you want to monetize yours, so I think you're going to find this episode interesting. Now, Casey is a niche blogger. He has many different sites. He has a team of writers working for him. We talk about all the ways that he has experimented with making money on the internet. He talks about how he manages his business, how he thinks about it, how he thinks about optimizing for SEO, and really kind of the future of the business of blogging. I think you're going to want to have your notes app open while you listen to this. So without further delay, here is my interview with Casey Botticello. Casey, welcome to the Blogger Genius Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I feel like, okay, so we've been on a call for like an hour, and now I'm like, we got to record. And a lot of this stuff you're sharing is so good. So I'm so glad that you are here.
No, like I said, it obviously, as we've been talking about blogging, but more broadly, the creator economy and different ways people can make money online and thrive in the passion economy is really sort of my area of expertise and something I love to talk about. So
yeah, I will talk to you about it like forever. So Casey, I know about you because I have seen you online. I've been on your blog, and you are a great resource. However, I know really nothing about your background. So would you share how you got to be this blogging expert and kind of where you are today?
Sure. So weirdly, the blogging title is kind of one of the more recent sort of descriptors. I would say that generally I started more on the digital marketing side. So I previously...
What is digital? What does that mean when people say digital marketing?
Yeah, it could include things like SEO. It could include things like visual graphic design, basically anything that moves the needle in terms of sales of usually digital products.
So could it be ads? Would you put that into digital marketing?
I would also include ads, a lot of the research that goes into, product development, and then targeting, trying to figure out what an audience actually needs. So I previously worked in management consulting at a few tech startups and at a lobbying and strategic communications firm. So that's sort of like my formal background, basically doing like digital PR type work, and then helping build some content for the tech startups. But in my spare time, I've kind of always been an entrepreneur, probably since a good 15 years, let's say now, maybe even before college. And basically, if there's a way to make money online or a passive income stream that's out there, there chances are I've tried it.
You got your fingers in there?
I really do. I think I have everything from like niche websites with monetized in every way through display ads, affiliate marketing, selling courses, ebooks, all that, to the sale of physical products. I've worked on WordPress plugins. I've self-published a lot of books on Amazon, KDP.
What's KDP?
Kindle Direct Publishing.
Okay.
They're basically just as ebooks. So yeah, if there's a way to make money online, chances are I've tried it, and that kind of weirdly, in a roundabout way, led me to focusing on Blogging Guide. Which
wait! I have to pause you for a second.
Yeah.
Of all of those things that you have tried, which have been A, the most successful, and B, the easiest to do?
I think definitely factoring in how long it's run and generated truly passive income. The ebooks I did through Amazon I did them maybe 7 years ago. I had a team of writers and myself, and I basically wrote a series of test prep books and easy guides, basically things that could be like a free lead gen kind of, freebie material, something that you might have behind like a soft paywall, but, easy things like that. I just knew Amazon was going to be a booming platform and figured an increasing amount of searches would originate there. So why not try selling, things for basically under $10.
So wait, what is your biggest seller? Give me the title.
I don't think I've disclosed any of my.
Oh, okay.
But I can say, like, weirdly, I know one that has consistently been is a series of actually driver's education exam books.
Okay.
Which I co-wrote with actually when I was moving to California at the time. I had to get my driver's license, a new driver's license, and that literally inspired me to put together a study guide, and I ended up selling that. And that California one has, like for 7 or 8 years, consistently produced passive income.
Okay.
When I say passive income, I do mean passive. I literally, like, I think every year pretty much I forget my password and I have to literally like reset it to log into my account come tax season, because the money gets direct deposited into my account, and I haven't touched it since. So there's no marketing, no additional promotion. Sales have like decreased over time because I haven't paid nearly any attention to it. But so to answer your question, I think that actually has probably been one of the most surprising things. If you had asked me, could I make like 6 figures doing that, I would have thought no. It was more of just kind of a random idea. So that's probably the most surprising or interesting of them.
Wait, so could you make 6 figures doing this?
You definitely could. There's a whole like, just like blogging, there's kind of like a whole subculture of people who own portfolios of either ghostwritten or maybe multiple books that they themselves have written. And that can be in different niches. So you can have like, your fantasy book, cookbooks. The reason I mention all this is because if you're listening to this podcast and you are like a writer, a creator of any kind, but especially if you have a writing, interest or background, it's always another way to, consider monetizing your content.
I love that. Okay. So back to what I had asked you. So you did all these things. So one that has been successful for you has been to write these books. And where else have you found success and relatively easy success?
Definitely the digital products was probably the fastest, both selling just like one-off Canva templates, basically just trying to address very specific pain points, something we had talked about before, but basically like just when someone's going through the process of launching their own business, a lot of times people feel overwhelmed, kind of trying to come up with all the marketing materials. And, usually you can create a very simple product that acts as a, universal template that many people would have interest in and would be of high value to them. So
okay,
the Canva templates are definitely a big thing. Along with that, I would say the niche websites are kind of like, will be this year's sort of like probably the 60% of the income. So
okay, because I just had somebody on my podcast to talk about niche blogging, niche sites, and it's fascinating. And I kind of follow it on Twitter. I don't know if you do as well.
yeah,
There are a bunch of people
do.
on Twitter, and I'm fascinated, especially because as an old OG blogger myself, like the thought of parting with my blog, it's like part of my family. So this idea of like, these are assets just kind of gives me a whole different perspective. So with how many niche sites do you own?
I know I have about 20 because that's what Kinsta, the tier I'm at, like my hosting cuts me off at, and I was running up against that. So I have, let's say 20 that are somewhat important to me. There are other sites that I have that are like things that I created as an experiment, or I'm just allowing to age, but those are on cheaper hosting platforms. So I would say probably like basically 5 to 10 that I'm very actively building. And then, maybe another 10 that I kind of rotate through or I'm just experimenting with to sort of.
How many of those websites are actually making money for you?
That 5 to 10 are generating some amount of money, with the top 3 or 4 of those generating the bulk of that. So
that is so impressive. And this is like your project for 2023?
It is. It's weird because having done all these other kind of, more difficult sales, I've done like memberships and apps. In a lot of ways, blogging kind of seems like a relatively simple way, let's say, or it's 10 years ago, I also had a blog and I never really made any significant money from it. But now I think largely because of the rise of these premium ad networks, Mediavine, AdThrive, stuff like that, basically there's kind of this like weird second gold rush where people are, kind of chasing these ad dollars, which it's very real. And that's definitely propping up a lot of the niche sites that you see people, building, and then the like huge multiples they sell at. Yeah.
Right. So here's a question. Are these sites you're building from scratch? Are these URLs you're purchasing? What are you doing? And are they in a cluster of niches that all fit together so you could like be linking them to build kind of domain authority? Or are these just like random interests?
So I mainly out of curiosity, I have a range of different niches, and just because I like to experiment, but the ones that are earning money are in 3 to 4 like similar but distinct niches.
Can you share what niches they're in?
One of them is in graphic design, and one of them is basically like a writing related niche. And then there's one that's kind of more of like my creative kind of just random. It's kind of like the design one, but kind of just like for fun, but surprisingly, if you can group something as a personal brand, which is definitely important to get accepted into Mediavine and AdThrive, you can access much higher RPMs. So
what do you mean by that?
If some people build these sites kind of without, they do a little due diligence, but they probably don't think about the end goal or the midterm goal of trying to get into these ad networks. So they might pick a niche, there's like, let's say gardening or something like that. And that's a good one because there's basically no issues with advertisers, are never going to have an issue with that. It can be both kind of your semi-personal brand, like you gardening as an extension of your lifestyle, but also it can be very product focused, these seeds, these plants. And, but, some topics, like let's say it's software, which is one of the niches I'm in, which is competitive, but has very high RPMs. In order to get accepted into these sites with very high RPMs, usually, unless you already have a very strong relationship with the ad network, it needs to be somewhat tied to a personal brand. So just posting reviews of like endless product reviews won't typically,
right? Because you start to feel spammy. Like these are like there's this kind of fine line. And in fact, this was my next question. I interviewed somebody, and I'll put her in the show notes. Chelsea Clarke is her name. And we were talking about, because she has a bunch of like female brands, like beauty and things like that.
She's the one, she has blogs for sale.com.
Yes. But did you listen to her episode? It was great.
I listened to her episode, and I'm just familiar with her site. It's nice because it provides pretty transparent multiples for anybody who's interested in investing in niche sites. So.
But here's the thing. Her feeling is she doesn't put herself like in the front of her blogs. It's a beauty blog, let's say, and she's talking about beauty products and all this stuff, but it's not spammy. It's not like a review, just like, trying to get sales, but she's not saying, hi, I'm Chelsea and I'm interested. It's more like a magazine format.
And that you're asking whether, you should put yourself
go that way, or should you be like, hi, I'm Jillian and this is my blog.
So there's no question that, like, as far as if you're purely going after display ad revenue, that having the personal brand helps, at least in the beginning, just in terms of getting into the ad networks. It's also really just great for traffic and authority. Google tends to like things that are
tied to people, right?
Tied to people. And that's not to say you can use an avatar. You can basically do it like more anonymously, like where you're acknowledging that you're a person behind the blog, but maybe you just use a first name, and don't provide like a ton of biographical information because you're more private. I'm not saying that's not possible. You definitely can do that. But if you're going after ad first revenue, it's useful to have a personal brand. Okay, now, in her case, I think she had, if you're building a number of websites, you might have to get away from that, especially if you're planning on selling, and flipping the websites, like, at 6-month intervals or something, because the new owner,
doesn't want Jillian.
Yeah. And you don't want, and even if they wanted your brand, you may not want your image or likeness, being used to maybe promote whatever the new owner wants to promote. So,
okay. You've got these sites, and I have 2 questions. One, how do you manage them? Do you have a staff of people who help you? And 2, you're talking a lot about ad revenue. When I was talking to Chelsea, she's like, oh, and then I'm adding affiliates and my own products and things like that. So how do you think about scaling these? And what does your team look like?
So my team is mostly me, in terms of like the consistent full-time sort of staff. I have a lot of, over time I've built up, I don't know, I probably have at any time 5 to 10 writers that are pretty much full-time producing content, usually under a freelancing or independent contractor sort of relationship, but they're spending pretty much, like the equivalent of a full-time, job, basically producing content. And that's one of the ways I have kept the quality high, is I kind of try to find really good writers. And once I manage to find them, I kind of try to find work for them at all times to keep them on the payroll and to make sure that, as much as possible, we have a good relationship. And that's important. That's something that gets lost a bit sometimes in the creator, sort of gig economy. You definitely want to work with people that, maybe you don't have a formal relationship where you're a W-2 employee, but I actually give, for instance, all my writers an annual bonus. So I have last year, and if they're listening, I'm planning on, I'm planning on doing it again this year.
Okay.
So I don't advertise that, but I truly am thankful when I can find great people to work with.
Are you discovering them on places like Upwork, Fiverr, that kind of thing?
Weirdly, everybody hates Fiverr, and that makes it sound like that's like, you would think based on reviews online that that's the worst place to find writers. And I'm sure that there are plenty of problems, but I've gotten pretty good at sifting through writers on Fiverr. And I've actually found some of my best writers either through there or through referrals from a Fiverr writer. So I can't knock the platform too much.
No, in fact, I found terrific people on Fiverr. I found designers. I found people to make videos for me. So I love it.
And a lot of times people like forget that it's very narrow the way Fiverr makes you sort of offer and segment your skills. Like you might find somebody who is a good writer, but can also do graphic design. And they basically like me, there's someone who happens to like that as a hobby. So they don't mind including like images, graphics, photos, along with an article, something that otherwise might cost you, a whole nother salary, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I try to, that's why I mentioned looking for the right people that are, have similar interests. That goes a long way. And, you don't really know those things until I've had to experiment with a lot of writers. I mean, I've given out the same like core writing assignments hundreds of times and only hired a few of those. So I spent a lot of money in the process of trying to find these great writers.
Kind of diamonds in the rough, or like a needle in a haystack.
And the funny thing is, I've tried expensive writers. I've tried almost always the best writers end up being on the cheaper end, which is sort of the weird thing I've found. Like after all this effort, and I would have been, in one case, I increased the writer's salary after we, went off Fiverr, just because I thought they were being underpaid. Like I was kind of like, felt bad for, I was giving them a lot of work. So it's definitely, you can definitely find great help through platforms like Fiverr, and outsourcing and scaling your team that way is so much, it is a big relief as a small business owner, because that there's just no way I could produce the amount of content or have the amount of support that I have without having basically this elaborate virtual team.
Wow. Okay. So you've got like 5 to 10 people, you said?
Yeah, there's 6 writers, I think, right now that are just doing writing. And then there's 2 people that do a mixture of writing and graphic design.
Okay.
And then
what systems do you use to manage this?
I kind of have everything right now in Notion. That's my product, which is nice because that is a free tool. I only even upgraded to the premium version, which is only like $50 a year, like recently. But I mean, I use that for everything. And, I highly recommend Notion just as a blogging productivity tool, both on the individual level, but also for managing workflow.
Got it.
It works really well.
We tried, and then we ended up with ClickUp, which I'm still not 100% sure of, but I like it. So that's been our kind of management tool.
ClickUp's definitely like I want to say like the premium industry favorite right now. Like a lot of people who are managing writers and content creators use ClickUp, and a lot of them are happy with it. Wait.
So sorry, finish what you were saying, because then I want to get to the second part of the question that I'd asked.
I was just saying that the ClickUp's great. I do think that probably based on my limited experience, if you familiarize yourself with Notion, you can accomplish a lot of the same stuff. Maybe ClickUp does have a slightly, it is more targeted toward this use case. But
yeah, I found the learning curve of Notion just a little too steep.
It's tough because it's like, yes, you can do complex things, but at the same time, they make something so weirdly easy and intuitive that for me, it was worth sticking it out and spending like a week getting used to it. Like compared to like, I don't know, a complicated Excel spreadsheet or something, Notion blows that out of the water. And you can import data from pretty much anything. So I find it very useful, but I know ClickUp's possible, definitely a popular choice too.
I want to take a short break because I am obsessed with digital products, and you might be sitting there going, yeah, but I don't know what kind of digital product to create. No problem. Get my digital product personality quiz, where you answer some questions, and within 2 minutes, you know where to start, what product to create first. Also, there's a worksheet and lots of cool resources. So to grab this, go to milotree.com/quiz. Again, milotree.com/quiz, and it's fun. And now back to the show. So now you've got this team of writers and they're creating content for you. You've got other people to help you with graphic design and images. And then you look at these blogs, and I know you're monetizing via, let's say, if you can get them into Mediavine or AdThrive because of the premium RPMs. However, yes. What else are you doing then to monetize these blogs? Where are the opportunities?
So to echo probably a lot of your former guests, they're definitely correct that it's not just ad revenue that I'm after. Almost all of these have significant affiliate revenue too. In terms of like the different streams of revenue, I still like display ad revenue, even though it's really high on these premium networks, it's still not the biggest earner, or it doesn't have the highest, earnings for me net of like fees. So creating your own courses and offering memberships and the subscription like services with recurring revenue, those are definitely higher earners. And that's the stuff some of which I offer through Blogging Guide, kind of as like the central repository of all that. But those are really the products that earn the most. Not all the niches lend themselves to creating products or services. And frankly, that is harder to scale because I tend to take a really strong personal interest in those. And I am sort of like more the face of those. So I haven't scaled those for, the other blogs yet, but at some point I'd like them all to have their own digital products and maybe have the revenue roughly split between that sort of perfect trifecta of ads, affiliate, and memberships or courses or your own digital products.
When you're thinking about a niche, how do you go through that? Like, are you looking at a niche and going, ooh, I could sell this, this, and this, like as affiliates, like no brainer. And then I could make these products. Like, how do you back into, this is a niche? Because when you are in a niche, you got to get deep into it. Like, if you don't like it, this is one thing Chelsea said, like, you should like the niches you're in, because you are going to, learn a lot about whatever this topic is. If you are not a gardener, but you go, no, I got to be I'm going to start a gardening blog, that might not be a good fit for you.
That's very true. And I have to agree. You do need to be passionate about it. You don't have to be an expert. That's definitely a bit of a misconception. You can, by learning and documenting what you've learned, you can become, as long as you're not in like a YL sort of a niche that basically Google sort of views as having a bit more impact on your health.
What do you mean? What is YMYL?
Your money, your life. Like basically the subset of niches like personal finance, health, things where information starts to cross into that gray area.
Yeah.
Maybe we do want some real credentials here.
Right.
And so the first thing I would do is rule out most of those niches if I'm backing into this. I know people love personal finance is a great example.
Right.
I have a lot to say about it. I have wanted to do like a personal finance blog many times, and I think I could like offer useful content, but it's just very tough to establish that without the right credentials. So if you happen to have credentials, maybe you're, not like, even if it's just topic adjacent, like if you happen to be a lawyer and, you can talk, I would take advantage of that. So if you happen to have any credentials,
right,
that should be an obvious place to start, because people like me aren't going to go after that content.
Right. It's kind of like people who get into wellness. Like if you're a nutritionist, you've got something behind you where you go, I've studied this, versus, hey, I just I just grow herbs and learn and discover on my own the healing properties of these herbs.
And that's a good example of a site that over these last few algorithm updates has typically been hit. Lots of sites that are mid-domain authority, but are focused on, like I said, if there's anything that affects your health or anything in any way, Google, is increasingly, as they should be, tough and strict kind of on trying to find appropriate sources. So,
okay. So you're going to say, nix those unless you have some sort of expertise, then lean in hard, but you have to be reasonable and like not be selling snake oil.
Yes, basically that's a good way to start. After that, though, it comes the hard part. I think that usually if this is your first blog, you need to lean into something that's like an overwhelming passion or interest, just because blogging is hard and takes, a lot of just a tremendous amount of time. And I always, try to preface everything I'm saying with, blogging is in no way a get rich quick scheme.
No.
It's actually like one of the worst, in terms of acquiring wealth quickly. It's not a great strategy at all. The interesting thing, though, is that you can build these sustainable businesses long-term from it. And so if you think about it from that perspective, come into a niche that you're interested in, is probably one of your 2-3 main hobbies, let's say, or just something you would spend hours researching for fun, going down internet rabbit holes because you just, for whatever reason, there's something there that compels you.
Can I just pause you for 1 second?
Yeah.
One thing that bloggers struggle with is this idea of like, hey, I want to grow a business and I know I'm supposed to niche down, but I have so many interests and I get bored so easily. So I'm going to just kind of do a variety of things and call myself a lifestyle blogger. And I always say, okay, here's the thing. And I feel like, Casey, you are a perfect example of this. If you are serious about building businesses, then yes, you do want your blogs to be in certain niches. Now, you could have multiple blogs. So if you have multiple interests and you love parenting and food and travel, You might need 3 blogs, but do not put them all under one blog.
I completely agree with that. And people, one of the most commonly asked questions is basically comes from people considering multiple blogs. And I actually was just working on a post about this, kind of like with some updated advice. But the short answer is, you really, if it's your first blog, there really is no reason to be considering doing multiple blogs. You need to be focused on just sort of making the first blog work, understanding, you can keep that in mind that, should you like blogging and that your first blog goes well, of course, you can always, build subsequent blogs. But even for people that have all the people and processes in place, even for me, I know my time is best spent focusing on like the 1 or 2 main blogs that I have that earn money. And the other stuff is mainly just, yes, I have lots of interests and I like running digital marketing experiments. So I can kind of justify tinkering around on other blogs a bit because I do share those findings with all my subscribers. But if I didn't have that, I would say no. I've rarely seen a case where working on more than one blog, like right off the bat, is a good idea. You definitely need, there are too many things you need to learn, I think, with the first blog before you can do that. So
I agree. So can we talk about SEO? Because we were talking about it offline and you had some interesting thoughts about it. SEO is a very popular topic among my audience members, because I think they find that if they can get SEO right, it is recurring traffic. It is that it's not like a Facebook post that goes viral. And then as soon as that post dies down, there goes your traffic. So when you sit down, okay, so let's say, let's say you've got your top 3 blogs, right? That you really lean into. Yeah. And you now need to come up with content for your writers. So will you walk through the process of how you figure out, well, what kind of gardening content or design content or whatever it is, how do you do this?
Well, so this is why also having an interest in the topic is important. And I do have a legitimately strong interest in those high earning topics. So usually, but the process is still more or less the same. You don't need expensive tools. I know I see a lot.
You don't need SEMrush or seriously?
No, I don't. You don't need SEMrush. I do use Ahrefs, and I love it. So like, I'm not complaining about it, but I mainly use it for once I've kind of exhausted like the first 100 obvious posts, and I'm trying to understand where my content might start to fit in terms of topical relevance or authority based on the competing sites. So probably for those first 60 to 100 posts that I'm going to do, most likely they're going to be the kind of the low hanging fruit. They're going to be, a lot of like informational posts. I don't do a lot of product posts, both. So like, I wouldn't just do like, this software review. I would try to address the question of how does this software help you accomplish X, Y, Z, something like that. Mainly because those posts have a chance to rank for more keywords.
Right. And especially because you're solving a problem first and then using a software for a solution, but you're not just shilling for that product.
Exactly. And just in general, like if you kind of want to not worry about being penalized by Google, it's probably best to stick to a pretty high ratio of informational content. Like at various times, you can kind of win with product oriented content, but where you get both the affiliate revenue and you're getting this nice display ad revenue, but that never really lasts for an extended period of time in my experience. If you want to build something that's more sustainable and something that you can kind of set it and forget it, then you need to focus on informational content. So that should be like probably 90%, I would say, of your content.
Okay. So wait, so if we were to use gardening, are you a gardener,
Yes.
by the way? I am not a gardener. I know
I'm not,
nothing
although
about gardening.
I actually considered it though for a niche for one of the other sites recently, just because my parents have a really nice rooftop garden, and I was like thinking, this might be an interesting, new thing, as I'm learning from my dad about like all these plants, and this is in New York City, so it's somewhat unique. And I like the visual element. I'm into
Okay.
photography.
Yeah, that's right.
So I thought there was an angle, and I still might do it.
Okay, so let's
yeah.
let's use that as a hypothetical. Let's say you
Okay.
buy like rooftop gardens, newyork.com.
Yeah.
And you go,
Yes.
all right. And so I'm going to go, how would you start to think about this?
So obviously a lot of this is going to start off with very simple sort of, I'm going to spend hours and hours going through Google, where I'm first, like I said, you don't need to necessarily, the premium tools can save you a bit of time here, but I'm basically going to look for what are some of the top auto completed, searches. The people also ask different featured snippets. You can tell a lot about a search and about the volume just by the type of information panels that Google provides. If you see, for instance, a featured snippet at all, that probably indicates there's a pretty significant search volume. That's why.
Wait, will you just explain what a featured snippet is? I'd like to just kind of reiterate.
That's a good point. The featured snippet is basically what people call position 0, or that first position on the page, where it's basically a standalone sort of box that Google selects maybe 2 to 3 sentences, and they sort of highlight that as the quick answer. And that is always a great, it's great to win those snippets. And that's definitely something you should focus on. Like when you're starting a blog is, that's why when people say niche down, I don't think it's just the topic that they're referring to. They probably also mean you need to focus, the types of answers to questions you're providing.
Right.
Because there are a lot of long tail keywords, meaning these, how to build your first garden on a rooftop in an urban setting. There probably are, there might only be, a couple hundred searches for that a month, but, even as a new blog, you can probably rank for that. And
get that real estate.
Get that real estate. And especially if you're a new blogger, get out of the Google sandbox first. But then, once.
And what do you mean by the Google sandbox? How long do you think it lasts, and what is it?
I guess it's sort of an unconfirmed but alleged period of time that Google unofficially keeps your website when it's brand new from indexing, mainly to prevent like spam or
to make sure you're the real deal.
Make sure you're the real deal. And this is unfortunately the period where a lot of bloggers give up. And it's very sad when I see that, because when you come into blogging new, you should probably expect that first 3 to 6 months, if you're buying a brand new domain that's never been used before, that you haven't posted content on, I would say you should expect that first 3 months for basically your content to, it might periodically pop up as Google tests it to see how it does against other existing results. But ultimately you're going to have to wait out that period. So that's why, you need to power through that first few months and kind of, have the faith that on the other side of that, ultimately those posts will start to rank. And that is kind of what every blogger has to go through. Some don't realize it because, for instance, on my higher earning blog, I just gradually posted over time because it was truly a hobby blog at first. So I posted like once a week for like the first year. And, I didn't think about it in terms of whether I was getting out of the Google sandbox. I remember there being a long period where I wasn't ranking. And then all of a sudden, I saw a bunch of,
So this is interesting. Okay. So we're doing like rooftop gardens in New York.
yes.
And you're starting to put those just different kinds of permutations, rooftop gardens in cities, urban gardening, best plants that can live in the winter on a rooftop garden, those kinds of things. And you're just kind of creating like an Excel spreadsheet or a Notion document. You're just
So I'm first gonna go after like maybe at most 5, but probably 3 topic clusters. And by that I mean sort of like groups of queries that are related to each other. So like you said, you might, under the rooftop gardening, you might have a whole topic cluster on weather resistant plants. I'm not sure what the terminology exactly would be, but like you said, most people don't live in areas that are conducive to, perfect year-round gardening. So, that probably is a whole subset of, your readers who are going to need help with that. And so I would say like that might be one topic cluster. Another might be, even more specific, something like the irrigation for the plants, like just focus on a series of posts about, the challenges of watering, plants, maybe, and this is where the kind of intuitive SEO part that I was talking about comes in. Google search is good for auto completing and recommending related results, but if a lot of times you can sort of figure out what people might be looking for using a bit of common sense and other platforms. For instance, if you're seeing a ton of YouTube videos, YouTube is a great source, which is also owned by Google. If you run a search on there and you actually go through, listening to people's vlogs talking about this is how I did this, chances are people are searching for that same information. It just might not have made it, into the queries for that exact question.
keyword,
yet.
right?
Yeah. And so, basically you're just trying to find, at first your goal should be to find these very specific clusters that you can just rank for at all. And ideally rank highly for. It doesn't matter if it only gets 50 views a month, honestly. Those are strong signals. I would much rather start a website with that, in month 5 is getting, only like 500 page views a month, even versus like 5,000 if the former has like, all kind of top results. Google does, it sends a different signal to Google. So it definitely helps, building your domain authority, and most importantly, it kind of establishes topical relevance, because remember, Google's not just trying to rank your content in a vacuum. They're trying to figure out where you belong while also simultaneously analyzing millions of other search results. So they're constantly comparing and trying to categorize things.
Nope.
So
what is your vibe on AI writing tools?
So this is a kind of hot topic right now. I don't want to blanket say that they're not a great idea, because I'm sure there will be a time and a place, and maybe someday Google will even change their stance officially. But currently, the AI tools can be great for writers who are basically really experienced editors. Very few can just sort of on autopilot produce content. I've tried maybe the top 30 platforms, and none of them with just like a 1-sentence topic can churn out an article anywhere near the quality of a pretty good writer. But with some heavy editing or using it for like copy on like a landing page or something like that, it definitely can be a time saver. But I think it's a bit naive to people think that Google won't figure out what's algorithmic and AI driven and what's not. I mean, these Google in the long run, they might crush some sites that are innocent in the process, but they'll definitely try to stop like just endless, generation of AI content. So the real question.
I feel like my husband and I are debating this a lot right now because he has a Dolly account, and
Right.
which is like an image. It's an image AI, and I'm just feeling like this is barreling down the tracks. And it's funny. I've interviewed an SEO who said, "Oh my God, get away! Like, don't do this because Google's going to punish you." And then I talked to another SEO who's like, "Well, it's kind of here and you can use it as a way to brainstorm or to get, let's say you facing the blank page, and that can be intimidating. So you can use it for ideas, but make sure you are editing this." And so I was curious what your take is.
I guess closer to the latter. I do think that there's a place, as long as you view it as a tool that you're using somewhere in the like ideation stage of things, as opposed to churning out the finished product.
Copy and pasting. Here's my new blog post. Here's my new blog post. Yeah.
Yeah. And even then I would be very cautious using it, both, there's a whole number of reasons, but I think it's generally not something someone who hasn't written their first blog post, let's say, should even remotely consider. Maybe if you're a veteran blogger and, like I said, can use it to help brainstorm new ideas, or maybe start a separate site entirely to sort of separate some of that content and de-risk.
That's interesting.
That would be my suggestion. But for somebody who's going to be starting, what's such a long journey of kind of building this, it would kind of be a shame to build it knowing that at any time, something might, if you fail to do quality control on a single paragraph, maybe there's some sort of issue that Google flags.
I think it's gonna change everything. I really do. I'm both intrigued and scared as I see how fast the world is changing. So that's just like my constant, I guess, conversation with David, my husband, just in the last couple months, seeing this whole thing happen.
It's a very real problem. Like a lot of people will say, well, Casey, like I'm being outranked by what's clearly an AI site, like in this, search query. And I'm battling a few of those too. There's a few niches where new blogs have sprung up and are churning out hundreds of posts a day. And they're slowly like outranking me in a few places. Honestly, that, it's unfortunate, but like for the most part, they might get away with it for some period of time, but ultimately you have to kind of count on Google, policing that a bit and, ultimately reining that in.
All right, Casey, you are as I said at the beginning, when we got on the call, you are a font of knowledge when it comes to blogging, when it comes to, I think, being at the cutting edge of blogging, which I do think is kind of niche sites and really thinking about this as a business.
Definitely. Yeah. No.
So if people want to reach out to you to learn more, to see what resources you offer, where should they go?
So yeah, I guess there's a few places. I think that the best place is, well, I guess people can follow me and get more blogging advice just sort of in general on my website, bloggingguide.com. If they want to reach out to me just personally or to discuss something entrepreneurial, there's also my personal site, Botticello.com. And I do have, although not completely related, a Canva template site, just canvatemplates.com, which I'm going to be adding a bunch of just sort of interesting Canva templates that are all geared towards hopefully making the journey of being a creator much easier. So.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to go check that out after we get off this call. Well, I have to say, Casey, I am so happy we connected. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Jillian. It was a pleasure.
I hope you guys like this episode. For me, I would say I like the way Casey's brain works. I like that he's trying lots of things, that he's making money via ads and selling lots of digital products. He's starting new blogs, he's being very intentional, and he's also willing to test and try and iterate. And I admire that. If I had to bet on somebody having lots of success in this online space of blogging, I'd put my money on Casey. Now, one last reminder about my ebook workshop happening on January 20th. Please go sign up. It's $10. Learn how to use ChatGPT. Learn how easy it is today to write an ebook. And you can use the same strategy to create any sort of digital product. So to sign up, $10, go to workshop.milotreecart.com. Again, workshop.milotreecart.com. If you can't be there live, don't worry. You will get the recording and a bunch of goodies. I hope to see you on Friday. And if not, I will see you here again next week.